My mom looked at me and said, "We sold your car to help your brother. You don't really need it anyway." I just gave a small nod and walked away. A week later, when they found themselves needing a ride, I simply stood in the driveway, hands in my pockets, staring at the empty spot where my car used to sit, a slow smile spreading across my face. At first, I wondered if I had parked it somewhere else, maybe forgotten where I left it. But no, there it was, the same dark oil stain on the pavement, proof that my car had been right there just the night before. A sinking feeling settled in my stomach as I turned and made my way inside. My steps were slow, deliberate. In the kitchen, my mom hummed a little tune while stirring something on the stove, completely at ease. At the table, my dad flipped through the mail, barely acknowledging my presence when I walked in. I kept my voice steady as I asked, "Where's my car?" Mom didn't even stop stirring. "Oh, we sold it," she said, her tone casual, like she was telling me she'd picked up a loaf of bread at the store. "Your brother needed the money." I blinked, my brain struggling to catch up. "You what?" Dad exhaled, setting the mail down like this was something he didn't have the patience for. "Look, you don't really use it that much. You take the bus most of the time anyway. And Brian, he's going through a rough patch." It just made sense. Brian. Of course. The favorite. The one who always seemed to need a little extra attention, extra patience, extra second chances. And now, apparently, extra pieces of my life. I took a breath, slow and measured. "So, you just sold my car." I said it flatly, needing to hear it again just to believe it. Mom finally turned to face me, wearing that sweet, placating smile she always put on when she expected me to just roll with whatever decision they made. "It's not a big deal, sweetheart. You're resourceful. You'll figure something out." A bitter taste crept into my mouth, but I swallowed it down. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just nodded. "Okay." Dad looked surprised by my lack of reaction. Mom, on the other hand, let out a relieved sigh, as if my acceptance was guaranteed. Without another word, I stepped out of the kitchen, then out of the house, letting the cold evening air clear my thoughts. I didn't know where I was going, only that I needed to get away before the frustration simmering inside me boiled over. They had taken something that was mine. No warning. No asking. And the worst part? They assumed I'd just go along with it. I walked for a while, my hands stuffed into my pockets, my mind replaying the conversation over and over. Eventually, I found myself at a bus stop, staring down an empty street. The irony of it all wasn't lost on me. Dad had been right about one thing, I did take the bus most of the time. But that wasn't the point. The car had been mine. I was the one who worked for it, paid for it, kept it running. It wasn't theirs to take. I clenched my jaw and checked the bus schedule. Fine. I'd make do. They wanted to believe I'd just figure something out? I would. But not in the way they expected. The next morning, I started making new plans. I reached out to David, a guy from work who lived a few blocks away. He agreed to let me carpool with him for a while. It meant waking up earlier than I liked, but I made it work. For everything else, I adjusted. I took the bus when I needed to, walked when I could. It wasn't convenient, but I refused to ask my parents for a single thing. For the first few days, they didn't seem to notice. Mom went about her usual routine, humming as she cooked, acting like nothing had changed. Dad still sat at the kitchen table, absorbed in the newspaper. And Brian? He lounged on the couch, scrolling through his phone, never once looking up when I walked past. No acknowledgement. No thanks. Nothing. That's when I knew. I wasn't just mad, I was done. Let them think I'd let it go. Let them believe I'd moved on. Because when the time came and they needed something from me, I'd be ready. And I wouldn't be nearly as generous. A week passed. I stuck to my new routine, carpooling, taking the bus, keeping my distance. My parents never asked how I was managing without a car. They probably assumed I'd just handled it. Like always. Then, on a rainy Thursday evening, their turn finally came. I had just gotten home from work, setting my bag down, when I heard my mom's voice from across the house. "Sweetheart, can you give us a ride?" I looked up, slowly unlacing my shoes. My dad was already near the door, coat in hand, while my mom wore that expectant smile, the one that said she assumed I'd say yes without hesitation. I blinked at them. "A ride?" "Yes," she said like it was obvious. Your dad's car won't start, and Brian took mine. We need to get downtown for an event. I stretched, dragging out the moment. Oh, I said finally. I'd love to help, but I don't have a car anymore. The way their faces fell? Almost priceless. Dad frowned. What do you mean? Just take, he stopped mid-sentence, the realization dawning. I nodded, letting the silence stretch. That's right, Dad. The car you sold? The one you decided I didn't need? It's gone. Mom's smile faltered. Well, can't you ask one of your friends? It's just a quick ride. I shook my head, barely holding back a smirk. I wouldn't want to inconvenience anyone. Besides, I'd been taking the bus. Dad muttered under his breath. You can't be serious. I shrugged. You were right, Dad. I didn't need the car, remember? The room went still as it sank in. For once, they couldn't rely on me to fix their problem. I wasn't going to drop everything and help them like I always did. Just then, Brian strolled in, tossing his keys onto the table like he owned the place. What's going on? He asked, glancing between them. We need a ride, Dad said, his tone tight. Brian shrugged. I just got home. I'm not going back out. I bit back a laugh. Mom turned to me again, her voice softer now, almost pleading. Come on, sweetheart. We wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. I tilted my head slightly, considering. Kind of like how I wouldn't have wanted my car sold without my permission? Silence. Dad sighed, rubbing his temples. Stop being petty. Just help us out. Petty. Right. Because standing up for myself, for once, was petty. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. I'd love to chat, but I have a bus to catch. And with that, I walked out. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one being taken advantage of. For the first time in years, I had one. I took my time getting home that night. Stopped by a coffee shop, let the rain soak into my coat as I walked from the bus stop, and, for once, enjoyed the simple freedom of knowing I didn't owe anyone a damn thing. By the time I stepped inside, the house was quiet, but the air felt different, tense, heavy. I barely had a second to set my bag down before my mother appeared in the doorway, arms crossed tight, lips pressed into a thin line. Was that really necessary? She asked, her voice clipped. I sighed. Already knew where this was headed. What are you talking about? She let out a dramatic little huff, shaking her head like I had somehow let her down. Leaving us stranded like that. I almost laughed. Stranded? They weren't stuck on some deserted highway with no gas. They were standing in their own house, fully capable of calling a taxi, hailing a rideshare, or doing exactly what I'd been forced to do for the past week, figure it out. But that wasn't the issue, not really. The issue was that, for the first time, I had said no. You and Dad didn't seem too worried about leaving me stranded when you sold my car, I said evenly. That was different, she shot back, too fast, like she'd been waiting for that response. Your brother needed help. And I didn't? I asked. She hesitated. Like that thought had never even crossed her mind. You always manage, she said, as if that was supposed to be some kind of compliment. You're responsible. Brian's not like you. Ah. There it was. The excuse they'd been using my whole life. Brian wasn't like me. Brian needed more. Brian had potential. I'd heard it all before. I'm tired of that excuse, I said, my voice calm but firm. You sold something that belonged to me without my permission and handed the money to Brian. And because of that choice, you didn't have a ride tonight. That's not my fault. That's yours. Her breath hitched, like she had never considered it from that angle. You're really going to hold this over our heads forever? She asked, exasperated. I shrugged. Just until I get paid back. Her eyes widened, like the idea was completely foreign to her. We don't have that kind of money right now, she said. Neither did I shot back. But that didn't stop you from selling my car, did it? For once, she had nothing to say. No quick comeback. No way to twist things in her favor. Good night, Mom, I said, stepping past her and heading to my room. The guilt trip had begun. But this time? I wasn't buying a ticket. The next morning, I woke up to a group text from my mother. Mom, we need to talk as a family tonight. Be home for dinner. I stared at the message for a long moment, debating whether I even wanted to respond. I already knew what this was, a last-ditch effort to spin things back in their favor. To make me feel like I was the unreasonable one for not just rolling over and accepting what they had done. I didn't reply. When I got home that evening, the whole house felt like it was holding its breath. My father sat in his usual spot at the kitchen table, arms crossed, jaw tight. My mother was setting plates down with just a little too much force. Brian was sprawled across the couch, completely unbothered, like none of this involved him. The moment I walked in, my father barked, "Sit." I raised an eyebrow but pulled out a chair anyway. My mother folded her hands on the table, her voice taking on that careful, rehearsed tone. "Sweetheart, I think we all need to clear the air." I didn't say anything. Just waited. My father sighed, rubbing his temples. "Look, we get that you're upset about the car. But this attitude, ignoring us, refusing to help, it's unnecessary." Unnecessary. I let out a quiet laugh and shook my head. "You really don't get it, do you?" My mother exhaled like I was being dramatic. "We just need to move past this." "No," I said simply. "You need me to move past this. Because for the first time, I'm not just letting you walk all over me." My father's face darkened. "We are your parents. You need to show some respect." "I did show respect," I replied, my voice steady. "When you sold my car without asking, I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I figured out my own way to get around. But now that you need something from me, suddenly fairness matters?" Silence. Thick, heavy silence. My mother tried a different approach, softening her voice. "Sweetheart, we're family. Families help each other." I scoffed. "Right. Like how I helped myself by buying my own car. And instead of respecting that, you took it from me to help Brian." Brian finally decided to chime in, stretching his arms like this whole conversation was beneath him. "You're being ridiculous. It's just a car. You'll get another one." I turned to him, patience officially at zero. "Then give me my money back." His smug expression flickered. "What?" I leaned forward. "The money you got from selling my car, give it back. Since it's just a car and all, that shouldn't be a problem, right?" He opened his mouth. Closed it. "That's what I thought." My mother rubbed her temples. "We can't just give you the money right now." "Then I guess this conversation is over," I said, pushing my chair back and standing up. "You're acting like a child," my father snapped. I met his glare without flinching. "No. I'm just done being treated like one." And with that, I walked away, leaving them to sit in the mess they had created. After that, the house turned cold. My parents stopped trying to guilt me directly, but the silence? That spoke louder than anything they could have said. My mother barely acknowledged me. My father grumbled under his breath when I walked past. And Brian? He just coasted through like always, acting like nothing had happened. But I didn't care. I kept carpooling, kept taking the bus, kept handling my own business. And every single time they needed something, a favor, a ride, help with groceries, I just smiled and said, "Sorry, I can't." By the end of the week, I could feel their frustration building. They weren't used to this version of me. The one who didn't cave. The one who didn't drop everything to make their lives easier. And that made them uncomfortable. Good. By the weekend, the tension had hit its breaking point. My mother was slamming cabinets a little too hard. My father barely spoke to me. And Brian? Brian just drifted through like he was untouchable. I could feel it coming. The moment someone finally snapped. And when it happened? I'd be ready. Saturday evening, I was in my room, mindlessly scrolling through my phone when there was a knock at the door. Before I could even respond, my father walked in, arms crossed, his expression set. "This can't go on," he said firmly. I barely glanced up, unimpressed. "What can't?" "This attitude," he snapped. "You're part of this family, and families don't hold grudges like this." I scoffed, shaking my head. Families also don't steal from each other. And yet, here we are. His jaw tightened. We didn't steal. We made a decision for the family. I stood up, meeting his gaze without backing down. "No. You made a decision for Brian. At my expense." My mother appeared in the hallway, hands twisting together anxiously. Sweetheart, please. Let's just fix this. I leaned against my desk, arms crossed. Fine. Pay me back, and we're good. They exchanged a glance. My father exhaled, rubbing his forehead. You know we can't do that right now. I shrugged. Then you don't get to tell me to fix anything. That's when Brian strolled by the doorway, yawning like he hadn't just walked into the middle of a storm. Man, you're still mad about that? You really need to let it go. Something inside me snapped. I stepped past my father, closing the space between me and Brian. Give me the money. Brian rolled his eyes, completely unfazed. I don't have it. I let out a short laugh, humorless. Of course, you don't. Because you're used to everyone else paying your way. That's enough, my father barked. I turned to him, my patience officially gone. No. What's enough is me being treated like I don't matter. I looked at all of them, making my voice clear and steady. So let me be perfectly clear, I don't owe you anything. No favors, no rides, no help. If you need something, ask Brian. Brian scoffed. Whatever. My mother's voice wavered. We just don't want this to ruin the family. I let out a breath, shaking my head. This family was ruined the second you decided I was worth less than him. And with that, I walked out of the house, leaving them standing in stunned silence. After that, things didn't go back to normal. My parents stopped pushing, but the tension never left. Dinners were quiet, conversations strained. Brian kept acting like nothing had changed, but I noticed how he avoided eye contact now. He knew. And I didn't care. I was done playing my role in their cycle. Then, a few days later, my mother made one last attempt. There was a soft knock at my door, hesitant, almost unsure. Sweetheart, she said gently, can we talk? I sighed but let her in. She sat on the edge of my bed, wringing her hands. We miss how things used to be, she murmured. We don't want to fight anymore. I studied her carefully. Do you miss me? I asked. Or do you miss what I did for you? Her lips parted, but no words came out. And that told me everything. I nodded. Then there's nothing left to talk about. For the first time, something in her expression shifted, like she was realizing, too late, that things wouldn't just go back to the way they were. She left without another word. The next morning, I overheard my parents talking in hushed voices. We should have handled it differently, my mother murmured. It's not our fault he's being stubborn, my father replied. He'll come around. I shook my head. No, I wouldn't. That night, Brian came home late, laughing into his phone. Yeah, man, it was great. Used the cash my parents gave me. No worries, they'll help me out again if I need it. That was it. The final straw. I packed my bags. When my mother saw, her face paled. You're leaving? I nodded, zipping my duffel shut. I should have done this a long time ago. She reached for my arm. But, we're family. I stepped back. No. Family doesn't do what you did. For the first time, real fear flickered across her face. Not because she was losing a son, but because she was losing the person who always cleaned up their messes. Without another word, I walked out the door. The air outside felt different. Lighter. Freer. For years, I had been the one they leaned on. The one who always picked up the pieces, kept the peace, never complained. And where had that gotten me? Used. Taken for granted. But now? I was done. I loaded my bags into my coworker David's car. He had offered me a spare room until I got my own place. As I shut the trunk, I saw my mother standing on the porch, arms crossed, a deep frown settling onto her face. You're really doing this? She asked, disbelief lacing her voice. I met her gaze, calm and steady. Yeah. I am. She shook her head. And what happens when you need us? I let out a small, almost amused smile. That's the difference, Mom. I never needed you the way you needed me. She flinched. But I didn't wait for whatever excuse or guilt trip she had prepared. I climbed into the car. And as David pulled away, I didn't look back. For the first time in my life, I wasn't their safety net. And it felt amazing. It took time, but I built something for myself. A life where I wasn't just the responsible one or the one who figures it out. I was just me. My parents reached out, of course. Calls, texts, half-hearted apologies when they realized I wasn't coming back. I never responded. They had made their choice. And this time, I had made mine. So if you're in the same position, wondering if it's okay to walk away, it is. Sometimes, the best thing you can do is stop setting yourself on fire to keep others warm. Because the second you stop, they'll just find another match. And you? You'll finally be free.